This chapter is all about the gift and the forsaken hero. The episode started with a fight between the hero and the Demon King. The hero defeated the Demon King. The gift. Unlike demi-humans carrying demons' blood and their powerful features, humans were powerless and pitiful. The gift was given to them by God as their salvation. When humans reach the age of 12, they are bestowed various powers through the gift. With the gift blessed to them, some became mighty swordsmen, great tacticians, and even wizards as powerful as a whole army. But with the gift came conflict with demi-humans, and the humans used their power to decimate them. The main character of this story was the hero. The power of the hero was granted by the gift. The hero arrived back at the kingdom after his fight. He went straight to the palace to see the king. The king was happy to see Galius, the hero of the people. The king was on the throne beside his queen, and the king said to the queen, "Galius's efforts against the demons were magnificent. Right, Isabella?" She responded yes. She said she had heard about his splendid valor. The king complimented Galius on his duel with the Demon King. The king said he had done a great job and had brought peace to the human world. He told Galius he knew he always had it in him. He then asked his son Jared if he does think so. Jared said back to the king that nothing can ever go wrong with his discerning eyes. Galius saw that it was only him, the king's family, and General Gotha were the only ones in the palace and wondered if the rest had been sent for post-war reconstruction. He felt his return may be sudden, but he is still the hero. The king said it has been a long war, but it's time to welcome the era of mankind. He gave thanks to Galius because he was the reason he could sit on his chair relieved of all worries. He told Galius he had one more thing to ask from him. Galius said back to him that his wish was his command. The king then asked Galius if he could give the credit of his achievement to his son, Prince Jared, including the defeating the Demon King. Galius was surprised by the king's request. The king said to Galius that Jared was kept hidden from the public, so it wouldn't be suspicious. At this moment, Jared crossed his legs and felt superior. The kind then added to his words that the hero is a figure who is loved by all citizens, and his appearance should properly reflect that. The king asked Isabella what to say. Isabella said back to him that she believes such things are better said directly. The king then said directly to Galius that he is simply ugly to be called a hero. After the king made this statement, Galius immediately had a flashback of when two kids mocked him and called him a demon and an orc. They ran and said the orc is going to get mad. The mother of this kid cautioned them to stop, saying to them that if they ever got involved with that half-orc, people would think they are friends with the demons. Galius felt so sad and went home. After arriving home, his mother sent him away. She said he was a curse, and because of him, everyone thinks she was involved with demons. Jared smiled heavenly and said to Galius that his appearance is not just suitable to be hero, and in that regard, he is simply superior. Jared was blissed. He realized he would finally get acknowledged by the people and things were about to get better for him. Jared added to his words that not to mention the gift granted to him was charisma, the power of charming. Galius saw in the prince that someone like him could become a hero. All it takes is having God's gift. Galius had a straight face all through because he had nothing to say other than to just accept his fate. The king said they would give their appreciation to him. Goethe went ahead to give him a bag of coins. The king said he must have been weary from the war. The king told him to accept the appreciation and retreat to the countryside to have a good, easy life. Galius realized this was just a way to get him locked away in a village so he would stay silent and obedient. Galius felt sad that this was the people he was fighting for. He accepted the king's offer and excused himself. General Goethe met up with Galius while leaving. Galius asked if he knew of this plan, and he replied yes. He knew, but unfortunately, it wasn't in his place to question them. He then walks with Galius and tells him to just think positively. General Goethe, in his mind, said, "Our God is a cruel one. Of all people, he granted you the power to become a hero. You, some boy from a poor village." He then asked Galius, "Item Master, was it? The gift that allows you to master all kinds of weapons?" Galius said he might be the hero, but without a proper weapon on hand, he is no better than a foot soldier or might even be worse. General Goethe said living peacefully in a quiet village is not too bad. He told him he already booked an inn for him tonight. General Goethe said tomorrow is the day when they unveil the hero to the public. He asked Galius if he was going to stay to watch the prince's tomfoolery. Galius replied, "Whatever, he doesn't care anymore." He then walked ahead. It turned out that Isabella and Goethe see each other every night in the same room to have fun together. She said to Goethe, "It seems things are going well." Goethe replied yes, and said Galius defeated the Demon King earlier than they expected. Isabella called Galius a pig and asked if he was going to be able to attend the celebration tomorrow. Goethe told her not to worry. She asked if the plan wasn't to use him to complete their mission. He said he is only trying to use him as a scapegoat and the assassination will be carried out by someone else. He said he could not tell if Galius would have pointed his blade at them, and his priority was for her to be safe. Isabella asked if he truly meant his words. Goethe replied of course and said if it weren't for her, he would have no hope of becoming the next king. Isabella's gift is perpetual beauty, so she has no issue of replacing the prince. Goethe said to her that she was risking her position as a queen with this scheme to take over the country. Isabella referred to the king as that fat man. She said, "That fat, unsightly man is wholly undeserving of me," and the prince who has faked himself as the hero is killed and the king dies in an unfortunate manner. Goethe said his gift is combat-oriented, and as the future king, he shall lend her his power any time to achieve their goals. Goethe, in his mind, called Isabella a stupid, vain bitch and said once he is tired of her, she is useless to him. Isabella, in her mind, also said, "Warmongering fool. I'll have you sent out for battles while enjoying my life in the palace with cute boys." Galius was on his way to visit the royal capital to prepare for his leave. He got mixed up in the crowd and was stuck. Today is the day they unveil the hero. Galius perceived the scent of wander. It is a special scent employed by the demons to draw any attention towards the user to something else. Galius wondered why it was here. He realized it was nearby, and its intentions were clear. He tried to move forward, but he couldn't. The prince was revealed to the crowd. The people couldn't believe it. He said to them it must be a surprise for them to see him, especially to those who had seen his ugly form when he was wearing the holy armor. He asked to explain himself. He said, "The holy sword and armor are the greatest treasure of our country, and only the hero is worthy of using them. However, these treasures bear a curse. Whoever uses these treasures will find their form and appearance disfigured." He said all this wouldn't have been possible without the love and support of the citizens. Galius kept looking for the demon because the prince might be in trouble. The demon jumped and attacked the prince. Goethe was surprised to see a demon, and he immediately brought out his sword. Galius came to their rescue using a coin to hit the demon from the crowd. The demon had a sylphide dagger, which they all saw. Goethe saw the gold coin and recalled that Galius was the one given a gold coin yesterday. The guards start to search around for the demon. Galius also continues to trace the demon down. The scent of wander is getting thinner, which means it is close by. He saw the demon on the floor and said to it, "That must have hurt." The demon was in pain and asked who he was in an aggressive way. Galius said he didn't mean to scare her. He told the demon to please calm down and put her weapon down. He said he was not an enemy and also not an ally. He asked if she had fractured bones and offered her a healing potion. The demon said it won't heal broken bones, and what makes him think she wouldn't know it is actually a poison. She also said she doesn't take things from humans. Galius drank the potion to prove it wasn't poison. He introduced himself as Galius, and the demon introduced itself as Lippy. He gave the demon another potion because he had a lot of them. The demon collected the potion and drank it. He then asked her why she attacked the prince. The demon said to avenge the demon king. The demon asked if Galius was with the human that guided her here. Galius was surprised to hear that. The demon said she was talking about the guy who gave her this dagger. The guy said to her that he had a grudge against the hero. Galius said he thought she said she was not going to take things from humans. The demon replied it was a different story, and that this was actually an opportunity to take revenge. Galius recalled the weapon. With the demon was the sylphide dagger from the royal family. He asked the demon to tell him more about the person, and the fact that Lippy had that dagger could only mean one thing. Goethe saw Galius and the demon together. He asked Galius what he was doing there. Goethe said he was supposed to thank him for saving his time. Goethe asked what else. Goethe called Galius a traitor and said to him that they knew all about his plans of infiltrating the demons into the capital to kill the prince. Galius was shocked and immediately said this must be a misunderstanding. Galius then realizes what Goethe meant by saving my time, plus the mystery of how Lippy had that dagger and the rumors surrounding Goethe and the queen. He realizes Goethe is behind everything. Galius confronted him and accused him of it all. Goethe said he is spitting nonsense. Galius said to Goethe, "Feigning and ignorance won't work. You were the one who instigated the attack on the prince." He said he doubts if he was the one that managed to obtain the sylphide dagger, which means the queen is on his side. Goethe said to Galius that he is awfully sharp for someone so mediocre in swordsmanship or magic. Galius said back to him that dead men do not speak, maybe he should try cursing him from the afterlife. Goethe attacked him. Goethe's power is perfect for combat since it strengthens his entire body, plus he can concentrate all that strength into a specific part of his body willingly. Galius, on the other hand, his gift alters his body so that he can masterfully wield any item. Once Galius lets his gift take control, he can deflect attacks like Goethe attacks, while using a cheap knife with ultimate precision. That was the gift that was blessed to the hero. Galius defeated Goethe easily. He stabbed Goethe through his mouth and said he had faced a lot of tough opponents and he wasn't one of them. A cheap, dull knife like this was enough for him. Galius said that's what he gets for conspiring with the queen to take over the country. Galius then collected the Sylphide dagger from Lippi and escaped. The guards tried to shoot at Galius. They didn't want him to escape. The king confronted the queen. He told the queen, other than he and the prince, she was the only one who could bring out the dagger from the treasure. The queen was in fear. She replied, this had to be a mistake and that she hadn't done anything wrong. She asked the king to please listen to her, but the king refused. According to the soldier who had stood beside the king during the fiasco, the king had shown a wicked, spine-chilling smile. The moment the guards wanted to catch Lippi and Galius, a lady who covered her head came in as a decoy, so Galius could escape. One of the guards caught the lady, and she then attacked him with her powers. She screamed at Galius to hurry and run now. Galius went as far as he could and got to a place. He felt he and Lippi would be safe for now. Lippi smashed Galius's hand and asked who he was. Lippi said she had just seen him kill the strongest general like he was nothing. Lippi then asked if he was a famous adventurer. Galius told Lippi he was the actual hero. Lippi was shocked and screamed, "What?" Galius told Lippi not to push herself because she was not fully healed. Galius passed the dagger to Lippi. It asked what he was scheming. Galius said he had killed many of its brethren. He then told Lippi to take its revenge, and he would be Lippi's opponent. Lippi grabbed the dagger with her both hands and asked why Galius saved her. Galius said his perspective about demons changed after he dueled with the Demon King. He told Lippi the king wasn't dead. Lippi was shocked and screamed, "What?" Lippi said their king died in the duel against him. Galius told her that's how the story goes. He then explained how things went that day. Galius already drove the Demon King into a corner. It could not attack again. The Demon King also had given up because the outcome of the battle was clear. The Demon King told Galius that victory is his, and he should end his life. Galius just stood and did nothing. The Demon King asked what the problem was, and he said to Galius that, at this point, it was going to regenerate. The Demon King said to Galius, "Speak, damn it, speak. This is the part where you say your lines, fool? You've ruined it." Galius stood and said he was thinking. The Demon King was getting angry and told Galius to kill him. Galius asked the Demon King why his castle was getting attacked. The Demon King was shocked by Galius's words and asked if he just realized it. Galius said they've been attacking since they started facing each other and asked the Demon King if he knew that. Galius said that wasn't the plan. The Demon King told Galius, "It is if you died, then the human army would have just retreated, but if I died, demons would be at a huge disadvantage. We will be forced to surrender our castle and all our land. Having us duel was just a plan for humans to ensure complete victory, and they were betting on my defeat." Galius didn't see that reply coming. He then asked why the Demon King didn't rush back to the castle after knowing all that. The Demon King said humans tormented them greatly, so it already expected them to attack the castle while it was gone. The Demon King hoped most of his men had probably evacuated by now. Galius realized the Demon King knew from the start that he was going to lose the war. Galius asked if the Demon King held back against him, and the Demon King said he fought with all his might. Since he is the Demon King, he had to perform his duty. Galius asked why it accepted the duel in the first place, and the Demon King said it was because he found Galius interesting. The indomitable warrior who dominates the battlefield with his golden holy sword and holy armor. Carrying such integrity and righteousness in his sword, he would really accept duels, yet never disrespect those who lost against him. Humans kept on attacking the castle. The Demon King realized Galius was right, and he should have rushed back to the castle to minimize casualties. Galius realized the demons fought and sacrificed so much just so that their families could live peacefully. Galius felt the humans had done but oppress them using vile, scummy tactics and trampling on them with their numbers, just because they felt threatened by their appearance. A little female demon ran into the scene. The Demon King asked what she was doing here. She backed the Demon King and said, "Please don't kill grandfather." The Demon King wrapped the daughter with his wings. He told Galius not to please kill her, but to kill him instead. Galius said to the Demon King that as far as he knows, the Demon King is dead. He said he was going to report that he already turned the Demon King to dust with no hope of it recovering his body. He told the Demon King goodbye and hoped they never saw each other again. Lippi was surprised to hear all that and asked if he was for real. Galius said yes, he couldn't kill him. Galius tells Lippi he gave the dagger, but he wants her to think before she acts. Galius did say he is Lippi's opponent, which means he is going to fight back if she takes revenge. It was not like he wanted to die. Galius told her to think about her king. Does she think he accepted the duel just for demons to keep fighting and dying? Lippy wasn't happy because Galius already killed many of her kind, but she forgave him because the Demon King once saved her life. Lippy was in tears as Galius patted her head. All the battles and all the killings Galius did were how he was told. He is a war puppet who obeys every command. That's the reason Lippy's like that, and he is sure there are many more like her feeling that way. Galius packed a lot of stones. Lippy saw him and asked what was wrong. He asked Lippy if she was hungry, and that he was about to make food for her. Galius turned stones into food. Lippy was shocked and asked how he did that. He explained to her that his gift was Item Master, and it allowed him to use any object to its fullest potential. He said some conditions had to be met to use such power, though. Lippy was happy to eat. She asked Mr. Galius what his next step would be. Galius said he hadn't made his decision yet. Lippy asked him to tag along with her. She's heading to the new lands in the Forest of the End. Galius said he is human. She told him not to worry, that everyone sort of respects the hero, and she is sure. If King Zizzle, the Demon King, is there, he will surely accept him. Galius was curious because he felt ugly. She said to him that she didn't understand the beauty standards of humans. She begged him to come along with her, and Galius then accepted since he had nothing to do. Galius also said he was only going to follow her if she dropped the formalities. After a while, Lippy slept off, but Galius was still awake. He saw a bright light, and a lady also in white looking like an angel appeared in front. He asked who she was. The lady said the moon called for her. The lady said she was a mere storyteller and someone who watches over him through a wall. She also said she is someone who is always beside him, and that satisfies his curiosity. She said her name was Elzenard. Galius asked if she was the goddess or a spirit who resides in the holy arsenal of their country. She said that would be presumptuous to say she is a goddess. Galius then asked what she wanted from him. She said she wants him to meddle in something since he is here. She pointed to the east and said there were people who needed his help. Elzenard told him this shall present a good opportunity in his soul-searching, and the choice is his to decide. She also told him this encounter is once in a lifetime. It would be a shame if he let it slip. Elzenard left and said she would continue watching over him. He asked why she was leaving now. She replied that she would always be with him. Lippy noticed Galius had been acting weird since, and she asked him what happened. Galius told her it was nothing to worry about. Galius and Lippy were heading east anyway, so it is not much of a big deal. Galius realizes things now are up to him, and he does not want to blindly follow orders anymore. Galius and Lippy peeped through the bushes and saw some sort of guys. Lippy asked if they were bandits, and Galius saw their flag and assumed they were definitely mercenaries hired by the kingdom. The men sent on a mission by the boss arrived back. The boss asked how things went over there. He told his boss the info wasn't lying and they already captured 20 of their elves, lots of fine ones. He said to the boss that their man Vulture was the one that caught them. He then told his boss that the boys were having a drinking fest and they let the women be. The boss said he is going to snatch them first before passing them down to the boys. The boss said they are going to earn so much from that and he is going to share with them as their reward. Lippy wasn't happy with what she was hearing. Galius told her just to stay there for now. Galius went into their midst and attacked them all. The boss was the only one left. The boss was in fear and asked Galius who he was. Galius already defeated everybody. He said he is in charge now and no one gets to question him. The boss ran away like a baby. Galius told Lippy to come outside. She came outside and asked if he killed them. Galius said he didn't. Galius saw a wagon and said they should take the biggest wagon. Lippy asked why they were taking a wagon instead of a horse. He told her they've got to bring food and supplies to the elves that were captured, and heading to the new land can be done later. Lippy said if he took all the supplies there would be none left for the humans here. Galius asked if she has sympathy for them. She said not sympathy, but she doesn't think anyone deserves to die. Galius said she has a strong moral compass, but there is a reason why they are taking their food. Galius needed to recover his strength, so he rested inside the wagon while Lippy was the coachman. Galius asked how much longer it would take for them to get to the destination, and she said maybe 30 minutes. They stopped after seeing a bright light coming from where they were approaching. It appeared to be the humans partying. One of them told the other to grab one of the elf girls, that it was time for fun. The elves were tied around. Galius was not happy with what he saw. It made him want to puke. Galius attacked the humans and injured most of them by slashing through them. Some also died. There were 3 left. Galius was already feeling dizzy. He injured 2 by using Item Master to break through their sword. And only 1 left, but he was already out of magic. The last man said to him, "Finally out of magic? You fig, that's quite the thing you are holding, but without magic it's just a knife." The last man said he gave him a scare, but he can't breathe anymore. He said to Galius not to worry, champ, that he isn't going to kill him now but heal all his men so they can slowly torture him. Galius could not concentrate anymore on using Item Master. Galius pointed out his dagger and wasn't sure if his aim was going to be accurate. As soon as he released the Sylphid dagger, it cut through the last man's head. Galius concentrated all his magic into the Sylphid dagger to shoot a bullet of wind. Lippy ran to him and asked if he was okay. He told her to forget about him and asked about the elves. Lippy already rescued them while he was fighting and told them everything. The elves approached Galius and said, "Hero of the humans." Galius felt there was no way they wanted help from a human, much less from their hero. The elves thanked him for rescuing them from their distress. Galius was speechless and shocked. The elves knelt to give their thanks. One of the elves said to him, "As the son of the chief Miguel, I'd like to once again offer you my sincere thanks on behalf of everyone here." Galius told them they don't have to be courteous. Miguel introduced Liliania, his little sister, to the hero and said he could call her Lilia. That's her nickname. The little sister screamed, "Brother!" He then asked why she was being subservient to the hero. Lilia said the humans destroyed their village, that they've suffered so much because of them, and he is their hero. Miguel asked where they were heading after this, and Galius said they were headed to the New Lands, where all the demi-humans escaped. Miguel said it was the same for them since their village had been destroyed. Galius asked them to follow him and Lippy since they were heading the same way. Miguel said many of them are not good in battles, and they would not want to hinder him. Galius told them not to worry about that. Lilia asked what he was going to do when he got to the New Lands. Galius said he was not too sure yet. Suddenly, Galius fell to the floor. Galius saw the kids that called him Orc in his dream. He also saw the cat that has always been there for him. He patted the cat in his dream but was also currently patting Lippy in reality. Lilia shouted and asked what he was doing. She told him he went unconscious all of a sudden yesterday. She figured he was going to wake up soon, so she checked on him. Galius told her he was sorry for making her worry. Lilia came in and asked what the two of them were doing. She then asked if he was feeling okay. Lilia told them to head over to the other side since Mr. Miguel was calling for them. Miguel wanted to discuss something with Galius. Galius looked at Lilia and felt awkward. Lilia said she wanted to tell him something. She said, as the daughter of the chief of Arenfir, she would like to express her gratitude to him. "Thank you for saving my life. You may be a human, and the hero, at that. But if it weren't for you, we would have gone through unspeakable things." She turned back and said, that doesn't mean she trusts him. She told Galius to stop daydreaming and that it was time to go. Galius liked the fact that she was straightforward to him. Galius saw Miguel and told him he was sorry he had made him do everything for him. Miguel said to him that it was not an issue at all, as long as he could recover well. Galius asked where they were right now, and Miguel told him they were headed northeast and currently in front of a big river. Once they cross over, they will pass through a forest, the wilderness, and a grassland. Then they will reach the mountain range. Galius asked if it was possible to cross the river with carriages. Miguel said it would be risky. Assuming they took the detour to the north, they might have to walk even though the carriages are faster, and they could abandon the carriages there. They couldn't head north because the soldiers from the kingdom might see them. Miguel asked what they do then, since it was impossible to cross this river with carriages. He then decides they would have to carry the food with their hands and abandon the rest. Galius said they could bring everything. He said they would have to build a raft and put all the supplies on and have the horses pull them. Miguel wondered how they were going to build a raft. He asked if there were ropes available, and Galius said yes, and that's what he plans on using. Lila said to the raft in a loud way that he knew the raft had to carry 4 carriages worth of supplies. Galius took a sword to chop the trees down. The elves couldn't believe he chopped them down with a weak sword. Galius said he would cut the trees, and for them, they should trim the branches to make logs. Lilia confronted Galius and asked why he was doing most of the work. He said to her that there are a lot of things only he can do. Lilia said he passed out and might be overworking. Galius asked if she was worried about him. She immediately told him with a loud voice, no, and it was all just because they would look bad if he was the one doing all the work. Lilia decided to make things faster by using fire magic. Galius was about to stop her, but he realized the result of her magic fire was progress. Galius became speechless. An astonishing power and precision. She told Galius he was drenched in his sweat and she could still go 5 to 6 times. 1 week later, Lilia saw her brother looking so down and asked what was wrong with him. Miguel said he had been worrying about their water supplies. They were rushing to get away from the river so they wouldn't be seen, and Miguel was afraid they'd been drinking more water than they should. The water available should at least last them for tomorrow and the day after. They would need to refill as soon as possible. Lippy said they passed over a river before. She said she couldn't see it but smelt it. She told them not to worry and to get their water back. Lilia decided to follow her since they needed a lot of water. Miguel wasn't okay with Lilia tagging along because his aim here was to protect her. Galius was so tired and currently sleeping. Miguel decided to stay back with him. Lippi promised to protect Lilia. She told Miguel to be cautious as she left with Lilia. Lilia and Lippi located the river and fetched water. Lilia asked Lippi the story behind traveling with Galius. She said she tried to kill the hero at the capital, not Galius, but an imposter while trying to take revenge for the Demon King and everyone else, but she failed and ended up almost getting killed. Then Galius popped and saved her, so they ran away together. Lippi said she was glad she met him even though he was the hero of the people. Lilia also said she doesn't particularly hate him either. Lippi flinched and looked at the floor. Lilia asked her what was wrong, and she said someone was there, and based on the footsteps there were not more than 10. She gave Lilia the canteen and told her to run. Lippi wants to act as a decoy since she's nimble, and she wants Lilia to go back to the camp and tell others about the situation. She told Lilia to send her regards to Galius as she smiled. The humans saw the demon and decided they would catch her alive. Lilia felt sorry as she ran. She blamed herself for not consulting Galius. While Lilia was running, she ran into some humans. The humans saw a female elf. They surrounded her immediately and tried to capture her. Lilia was about to use her magic fire, but they were already too close to her. Lilia then decides to yell out loud so everyone will know. Galius came out from nowhere and told her not to yell. Galius showed no mercy on the humans as he slashed through them. Lilia cries and begins to tell him she's so sorry and tells him about Lippi acting as a decoy. Galius told her to calm down and they should return. Lilia was shocked and asked Galius if they were not going to help Lippi. Galius told her no, they weren't going to help. The humans asked Lippi to take them to where she was camping. They scouted the arena and didn't see anyone. They asked her if she was sure she brought them to the right place. Lippi said since she didn't come back on time, maybe that altered them and they must have thought something bad happened. The humans laughed and said she was left for dead. Galius attacked one of the humans from the bush and dropped dead. Miguel slashed through the other human hands. He screamed they should show their fucking self as he his in pain. The rest of the humans surrounded immediately and said they would let the demons go. They begged for mercy as they said they were just acting on orders and would return immediately. Galius said he has no sympathy for them. He brought Lippi back to meet Lilia. They were happy to see each other. Lippi told Galius she did what he told her, that if she did not stand a chance, she should submit to them. Galius told Lippi she did well. Galius realized these few days have been evident, and to protect everyone he can't let these humans live and run away. Galius is ready to destroy any of their pursuers without hesitation. Lippi almost got attacked, but Galius identified her immediately at her right-hand side. She used her wind-type weapon to end the traitor. Lilia told her she was awesome. She said it all thanks to Galius for teaching her. Lippi asked Galius if he could teach her how to use a sword, and he told her she was more suited for magic. Lippi said her main elements are wind, earth, and water. Galius said that's rare and told Lippi she's very talented. Lippi said she sucks at magic. Galius said she might be good at using weapons implied with her elements, judging from how she used the sylphid dagger. Lippi asked if she could be as good as him, and Galius told her it was different since he was using his gift. He told her she could be an all-rounder since she had the nimbleness and keen senses of her race. Since Galius's skill of using the sword and bow came from his item master, he is not sure if he could teach her. He told her to watch, understand, and remember, and she can learn from him that way. Lilia saw them and said she would not fall behind Lippi. She said she could do it too. Galius asked her isn't she supposed to guide the way and cover for Miguel. Galius told her since most of the others are not experienced in battles, he and Lippi will deal with the enemies, but she is still needed just in case. Lilia agreed and went ahead to join her brother. Galius and Lippi continued with their training. Galius and others saw the forest end from above and continued their journey till they finally reached it. Lilia and Lippi were so happy. Miguel said he would go talk to the people here. Galius wondered if they would still allow him to their group after this, and planned on going solo from here. Galius was glad he got everyone to the final destination. Lilia called Galius and gave thanks to him for allowing them to get there safely. Galius said they did it because everyone worked together. He also thanked her. Lilia said she had acknowledged him quite a while ago since everything he did was for them and not for himself. And if there is anyone that treats him badly in this town, she'll make them pay for it. She then asked him to come live with them in their new country. Lippi asked what they were doing, holding hands while blushing. She then teased Lilia from behind, and Galius busted. Miguel talked to the people, and they decided to throw a party for them since it must have been very difficult for them to make it here. Miguel told Mr. Galius there was someone who would like to meet him. Galius was asked if he was the hero, and if it had been 2 months. Galius was shocked to see the Demon King. The Demon King said, "Welcome our brethren to the nation formed by demi-humans. The paradise at the farthest end of the world, Liamresta. This chapter starts with Galius waking up slowly from his sleep, his head hurts, and wonders where he is. Lippy was already at his front, being patted by him. Lippy said he had done this before too. She asked him if he loved patting her head that much. Galius said no slowly and was about to explain, but Lippy already said she doesn't mind though. Galius asked if she was serious. She said to him that she didn't hate it, just that he surprises her sometimes. Galius had his hand at the back of his head. She asked what was wrong. He said it was just a hangover. They went too hard yesterday. Galius joined the Demon King and others drinking beer, and he requested more beer. The Demon King asked what was the kingdom thinking about letting go of someone who was this outstanding. Galius said he knew it would happen. The Demon King asked if that was so, and he then asked what he was planning to do after this. Galius tightened his body. The Demon King told him he didn't have to decide now, but to take his time steadily and think long about it in their country. The Demon King patted him and told him he was their guest, and they welcomed him to stay there as long as he wanted. Galius was told to drink more, but he already had a lot yesterday night. Lippy told him she had got something for him, which she gave him, and said it was medicine for hangovers. Lilia told her to give it to him. Lilia was mad at Lippy because she told her to keep it a secret. Galius told Lilia she could have given him the medicine directly. Lilia said it was all because she didn't want him to owe her. Lippy said to Lilia that she told her it was because she was shy. Lilia said whatever and asked Galius if he was interested in looking around the place. Galius agreed to her since they had to do it together. The people in the town were so nice to the new arrivals. Lilia said she supposed they think of them as fellow escapes. Galius in his mind was like, fellow escapes who had no choice but to run from humans. Lippy said she was starving. She saw a restaurant close by, but it was already closed. Lippy didn't care and decided to knock till someone answered. The owner of the restaurant came outside. Lippy said they were hungry and asked if he minded if they all took a seat. The man didn't mind and told them they had fewer options for food since they were still preparing to open. The owner noticed Galius was staring at his face. He then asked if something was on his face. Galius said no. It's just that people always tell him he looks like an orc. He apologized to the man for staring at him like that. The man told him he looked like them a little bit, but he looked more like the elf girl, much more than him. Lippy agreed to what the man said. Lilia said it was obvious, and why is he surprised? Galius said, Lilia's much better looking than him. Lippy and the elf don't understand the beauty standards of humans, but they know Galius is cute by their standards. Galius was touched to realize demi-humans are not disgusted by his appearance. Their food was served after a while. Lippy asked Galius what he thought about their country. Galius said he would love to stay here forever. Lippy and Lilia were so happy, they told him he could join them and settle as a whole instead of as a guest. Galius asked if they brought him here just to persuade him. Lippy said he looked so unsure. Galius said he wanted to be with them all. They thanked the restaurant owner for the food, and the owner asked Galius how the meal was, and Galius told him it was great. The owner told him he should always come back. Galius agreed and promised not to miss his next food. The mayor of the Betrayal introduced the new residents to the people. His voice was very loud. He apologized for how his voice was. He saw the hero and told him he looked fierce. He then welcomed him. The mayor told them, the Betrayal is an agricultural village that's in the outskirts. The center of Liamresta is the capital, and surrounding it are the suburbs. The suburbs are located around rivers, and they're made up of very diverse populations. He said elves and werecats live there too, and they can find a place to stay around there. He then asked Galius where he would prefer. Galius said he has no experience with living in a community and has been isolated ever since he was young, so he plans to live alone first and slowly integrate into their neighborhood later on. Miguel told Galius they all respect his decision, but if there's anything he needs, he should not hesitate to ask them for help. The mayor approved his demand and took him to a house that used to be a village guardhouse when the village was still being built, but it's not used anymore. The mayor promised to find him a better place, but he has to manage there for now. The house looked dingy from the outside, but worse inside. The mayor said he should probably go live with the elves until they get him a proper house. He told the mayor not to worry, that this is fine. Galius was so happy this was the beginning of him living his life as a normal human. The mayor left and said he would be back with some stuff for him. Galius went back in to start cleaning the house. He went outside to sign in to an application for logging a certain amount of trees. He was asked if he had a horse to transport the logs or if they should help him purchase one. Galius said, sure, he will take up on that offer. Galius was introduced to different collections of horses. He then purchased a horse with strong legs and a good worker. The tools to take care of the horse were given to Galius free of charge. Galius asked if that was fine, and the seller told him, of course, our fellow villagers got to help each other out. The mayor came to visit Galius. The mayor asked him what he thought of the village. Galius told him everybody had been incredibly kind. The mayor told him the village is still developing, so they happily welcome any new members. The mayor said there were all people who lost their homes to the humans. Galius asked the mayor if the people would welcome humans in general. The mayor said that's a tough question, but personally for him, he would, and he is not sure of what others would say. The mayor called Galius walking evidence that good humans exist. At yesterday's party Zizzle, the Demon King said that demi-humans tend to strongly stick with their race. Galius also figured demi-humans were quite segregated from each other, but in Limeresta, all these races come together and live as one. It was a bad idea for demi-humans to live in their small communities. Zizzle said that it was because if there were any danger presented to these isolated communities, the whole race could end up going extinct. But Galius feels he had more to say. Galius and Zepar did some farm work and also discussed how fine and dandy it was. Galius went home. He was surprised to see Lippy. Lippy asked if he minded if she stayed over tonight, and Galius asked if she already told her foster parent. She said she already told her uncle and auntie. She asked Galius if he was talking to old man Zepar just now. Galius said yeah. He invited him to do some farm work and gave him vegetables in return. Galius said he would probably use them as stew for dinner. Lippy was so happy. She said she loved his stew. It was late already. Lippy had already slept off, but Galius was still awake. A bright light shined on him. It appeared it was Elzenard. Elzenar stared at Garius with sad eyes. He asked her if she had been allured by the moon again. She replied that she had heard a cry for help, and she was still hearing it coming from the forest. Harris was confused, wondering who could have been calling for help from the forest. Elzenar further informed him that it had been a weak voice, but the Lord of the Forest was refusing her entry. If she were to forcefully enter, she would cause trouble for the townspeople. She added that it was definitely a ghost beast. Garius remained silent, ruminating on all she had said. Elzenar asked if Garius could enter the forest instead of her. He replied that he understood, and that if he ignored it, he would not be able to sleep that night. He asked her if it was really okay for him to enter, and she replied affirmatively that as long he did not go too deep inside, there would be no problem. Garius stepped inside and saw a small animal lying on the ground, unconscious. He dashed to it and picked it up, realizing it was barely clinging to its life. He wondered if he would be able to save it if he hurried back. As he took a step forward, he sensed the presence of a monster behind him. He initially reached for the short dagger by his side, but thought better of it. Instead, he held onto the animal he had saved and immediately left the forest. As he looked back at the opening to the forest, Elzenar commented that he had really held back. Such intense bloodlust, if I had fought, this guy would have been caught up in it. We need to give this guy medical treatment, he replied, referring to the animal he carried in his arms. Elzenar declared that she would entrust the animal to him, and Garius ran back to the forest. Back at the village, the doctor informed Garius that the animal's bones had been fractured. It seemed like it had been on the verge of death, but had managed to survive by healing itself, which relieved Garius. The doctor mentioned that the animal looked like a wolf, but it also looked like a species she had not seen before. She asked him what kind of species it was, and he replied that he had just found it had collapsed in the forest. The doctor yelled out in shock that Garius had gone into the forest. Garius hesitatingly replied that he had. The doctor warned him that it seemed like there was a gigantic beast in the forest, so he should not be entering it. After apologizing, Garius asked if the gigantic beast was a demi-human. Rubbing her chin, the doctor replied, I think it's what you humans call an evil spirit. She explained further they were able to do things like communicate with each other. She advised him to ask the mayor for further details. Garius thanked her for the explanation, and she replied that the most important thing was that he would contact her if the animal's condition suddenly changed. He scooped the animal into his arms and thanked her again, apologizing for bothering her so late at night. He left with Pippi, waving goodbye to the doctor. The next scene showed birds chirping at a window as the animal Garius had saved yawned happily. Pippi commented that it was already completely healed. The animal circled Garius happily as he replied that maybe it had not needed the extra treatment. Maybe. It has a thankful face on it, doesn't it? By the way, what should we name it? Pippi replied and asked. Garius replied that he had not really planned on raising it. Pippi reminded him that the animal had gotten injured in the forest and wondered if it would not be dangerous if they returned it to the forest. Garius admitted that she was right and began to think of a name for the animal. He suggested that they go with Ao, and Pippi playfully replied that he had simply based it on the color of its hair, but she thought it was a good name. A while later, Garius was being praised by a dwarf for getting a task correct on his first try. The dwarf mentioned that when Zizzle Sama had introduced him to Garius, he had been half convinced. "Looking for a job? Come with me and I'll recommend you a way to find one," Zepar had said to Garius, who had approached him, looking for a job. The dwarf gave Garius an offer to work together in the tool shop, and Garius, albeit thankful, replied that he would answer once he had more experience working. At the blacksmith shop, Garius was praised and pleaded with to work for them. The same thing happened at the repair shop. Later at night, Zepar cheerfully commented that Garius was popular and asked if he had decided on what kind of job he wanted. Garius replied that he had not been able to decide on one. To him, all the jobs had been fun, which was why he felt like he needed to help out with all of them. Having no problem with that, Zepar said that once he had made his choice, the next was marriage. Garius shot out his drink in surprise. Going on, Zepar suggested Lilia, and Garius replied that he did not know if they would be a good match. Why? Is it because of the difference in social status? She's the leader of a village, isn't she? Well, even if she looks like a princess, the people here won't really care, you know? Garius replied that that wasn't what he had meant, while silently noting to himself that the people there did not really care about physical appearance. Garius mentioned that he was a human, and Zepar explained that different species of demi-humans could not create a child. But with a human and a demi-human, there was no problem. Garius had heard about the latter, but the former was news to him. He eventually explained that Lilia was like a close friend and a battle partner, and that having those feelings of love would cause trouble for Lilia and Miguel. Zepar, teasing, remarked that it felt like Garius really wanted to protect them, and it was kind of suspicious. Garius explained further that he had even gotten a job, so he could not think about that kind of stuff yet. Also, he had not gotten used to the town. Zepar assured him that he would show him around, mentioning in the process that orc women were great, and his missus was so powerful. "By missus, do you mean your wife? I thought I heard that you were single," Garius asked him. Zepar replied that he had come to the town with his wife, but her condition had suddenly gotten worse, and she had passed away. Garius asked if he had kids, and he replied that he did not. He then changed the subject. Soon, Garius was drunk and asleep. He told the sleeping Garius not to worry. He had already been acknowledged by the entire town as an impressive man. As Ao looked up at him, he remarked that he had thought Garius, the kingdom's hero, would have been much more terrifying. The following morning, Lilia knocked on the door, and when Garius opened it, she cheerfully greeted him and informed him that she had gotten the medicine and herbs he had requested. Confused, he quietly thought to himself that he barely remembered saying that the other day. Still cheerful, Lilia went to Ao, who was in Garius's arms, and began to pat its head. Ao bit her hand, and she screeched in pain while Garius scolded Ao. Lilia, in pain, said that she thought animals liked her. Garius apologized, and holding onto her hand, assured her that Ao had thought it was just playing around, but he would warn her from then on. Just then, a demi-human barged in and asked Garius to make her his wife. Both Garius and Lilia stared at her in shock. Galius was left puzzled as Kukuru yelled out that they should get married. He asked her to hold on, wondering if her name was truly Kukuru. She was so happy to hear that he remembered her name and confirmed it with excitement. Galius then inquired if Zizzle was with her, but Kukuru explained that she had come alone, saying she had come personally to meet him. At that moment, Liliania walked in, recognizing Kukuru and addressing her respectfully as Lady Kukuru. However, Kukuru seemed confused and asked politely who Liliania was. Liliania introduced herself as Liliania, the daughter of the chief of Arnfil, stating her full name with pride. Kukuru greeted Lilia warmly, saying, "Ah, you are part of the group with whom Mr. Hero traveled. Welcome to Liamresta. Please find yourself at home." Lilia thanked her, but then an awkward silence fell between the three. After a brief pause, Kukuru broke the silence by suddenly dropping to her knees and apologizing. She explained that she hadn't known Galius was married and acknowledged it had been inappropriate for her to behave in such a manner. However, she was quickly interrupted by Lilia, who shouted that Kukuru was mistaken. Kukuru was surprised and asked if she was indeed mistaken, and Galius intervened, clarifying that he and Lilia were not in any such relationship. Kukuru was visibly relieved to hear that, and still hopeful, asked Galius if he would consider taking her as his partner. Before Galius could respond, Lilia shouted, "Hey, you can't have—" Kukuru quickly realized that Lilia did not support her proposal. Reluctantly, she apologized and explained that if Lilia was against it, she would not insist, emphasizing that Lilia must be his wife after all. Lilia responded again, loudly insisting, "We are not an item." The tension in the air seemed to grow as Kukuru, feeling awkward, silently withdrew from the conversation. Just then, Tilios entered the room, asking if Galius was present. He noticed Kukuru was there as well and then asked Galius to step aside. Once they were in a more private space, Telios whispered to Galius, asking if he had heard that Lady Kukuru had rushed out of the capital to see him. He then asked, "Did you hear about her reasons?" Galius told Telios that he had not heard about Kukuru's reasons for coming to see him, and asked him to share if he had any ideas. Telios explained that Kukuru had become interested in him and had rushed out to him after hearing about his poor living conditions. Galius tried to find some excuse to dissuade her, but none of his explanations seemed to work. He was left wondering what to do. Telios then explained that King Zizzle had suggested a solution. "We could have Lady Kukuru stay with you for a while so she can see for herself that you are living all right," he proposed. Lilia, overhearing their conversation, immediately yelled at the idea, picturing what could happen if a young girl and a young boy lived under the same roof. "Won't they end up having a baby?" she exclaimed, her voice full of concern. Kukuru, unsure, asked if that was really the case, to which Lilia confidently replied, "Yes, that's right, based on my limited understanding, of course." As the two continued talking, Galius turned to Telios and asked if Lilia's reaction was not a bit too overblown. Telios explained that Lilia was only 13 and went on to explain something about elves and their cultural views. Afterward, he added that he would leave the whole situation to Galius to handle. Galius, frustrated, shouted after him, "Hold on a moment." But Telios, with a smirk, jokingly told him not to lay a hand on Kukuru. Galius, irritated by the situation, snapped back that it wasn't the time for jokes. Once Telios left, Galius, Kukuru, and Lilia went fishing together. Lilia turned to Galius and asked if they were just showing Kukuru how he worked. Galius nodded, explaining that he would feel bad leaving her alone at home. Kukuru interrupted them, offering to help Galius. As Galius was about to agree to her request, Kukuru eagerly offered to do the spinning again. She quickly demonstrated her skill, catching a large number of fish. Both Lilia and Galius couldn't help but comment on her impressive strength. Galius thought to himself that if Kukuru had been born 10 years earlier, he wasn't sure he could have beaten her, even with Elzenard's help. He tried to shake the thought from his mind. Kukuru approached them with a bright smile, happily yelling out their names. They then went to the Goblin Ranch, where a goblin couple warmly welcomed them. "Please follow us," the wife said, and the three of them followed the couple. As they walked, it was clear to Galius that the goblins were very much in love with each other. Galius, watching their affection, blushed deeply, feeling a little awkward as he observed them. He was lost in thought when suddenly Kukuru jumped onto him. He quickly warned her, "It's so dangerous! I'm holding a sharp edge!" Kukuru apologized immediately, and Lilia, annoyed, cut in, yelling at Kukuru not to bother Galius while he was working. Kukuru, however, continued to cling to Galius, but after a few moments it was just Kukuru and Lilia. The goblin couple, who were also busy with their work, kindly told Galius to take a break and offered to handle the remaining tasks. Gratefully, Galius agreed. While resting, Lilia informed him that she was also done cleaning. "Good, let's have lunch together," Galius said cheerfully. The two of them settled under a large tree to eat. As they sat down, Galius asked Lilia where Kukuru and Blue were. Lilia explained that they were still playing. The three of them began eating while chatting, and after a while, Lilia thanked Galius for the meal. Galius, noticing Kukuru and Blue playing nearby, smiled. He watched as Kukuru explained how smart Blue was. Curious, Galius approached and gently patted Blue's head. "Is her horn the result of a sickness, or is it just natural?" he asked. Kukuru tried to answer but then resumed playing with Blue. Just then, Telios and Zepar appeared. "You were going to represent the town and talk with the spirit, right? The mayor and Kukuro, sure. But Zepar, are you going too?" Galius asked. Zepar nodded, explaining that he had met the spirit before and was just going to give a greeting. Galius replied that it was reassuring. However, before they could continue their conversation, Kukuru's voice broke through, and they heard her crying. Galius quickly asked her what was wrong, but before she could answer, Zepar approached her. "It's been a long time," he said warmly, expressing his happiness at seeing her again. Galius then turned to Zepar and asked about the appearance of the beast spirit. Zepar admitted that he didn't know. Just then, Kukuru cut in, explaining that Lunathea, the spirit beast, liked to hide her appearance. She revealed that the beast was so shy that she would often hide in a cave. After the conversation about the spirit beast, it was time to leave for the meeting with Lunathea. The group left, leaving Blue and Lilia behind, but Galius promised to play with Blue when he returned. Blue trotted into Lilia's room, her tail swishing as she barked softly. Lilia, noticing her unusual behavior, asked, "What's wrong, Blue? Did you come to play?" She reached out to pat Blue, smiling gently. "I bet you must feel lonely with Galius away," she added. Blue barked again, this time more insistently, before turning around and walking out of the room. Confused, Lilia tilted her head. "Do you want me to follow you?" she asked aloud, standing up and trailing after the wolf. Blue led her through the corridors with purposeful strides, until they reached a spot where the sylphid dagger lay. Lilia picked it up, examining it curiously. "Did Galius leave this here?" she murmured to herself. "I suppose it's because the spirit beast might be cautious around weapons." As she stood there, contemplating the dagger, she noticed Blue heading toward the place where she had gotten injured before. Lilia furrowed her brow, a sense of unease creeping into her thoughts. "Why are you going back there?" she muttered. A sudden realization struck her. Could it be that Galius was in danger? When they got to the forest, they were surprised to see an area in a mess. Galius sensed the presence of the monster again and hurriedly yelled at Zeepel to get back as something was coming from below. Zeepel hurriedly moved back and the monster appeared. It was a gigantic grizzly. Kukuru yelled at them all to run as an evil spirit had possessed it. The gigantic grizzly struck Zeepal from behind, and Galius yelled his name in shock and surprise. Kukuru charged at the bear, barely escaping its strike in time. She got distracted, and just as the grizzly raised its paw to strike her down, Zizzle pushed her out of the way. He lifted her unconscious body and threw her to Galius, who caught her. He ordered Galius to take Kukuru and leave. He told him that there was a barrier around the bear, so they should escape before it was too late. Galius yelled at him not to be stupid. "What about Zeppel? I'll fight too." Zizzle replied that he must not, as he did not have the sylphid dagger on him, so he would not be able to fight. He asked Galius not to worry about him or Zeppel. Zeppel, bruised, casually said to Zizzle that there was no way that he'd double suicide with him. Galius was reminded that they always prioritized others before themselves. His mind flashed back to the memories he had with them. He looked down as Kukuru called his name and apologized to him. Making his decision, he walked towards Zeppel and Zizzle, who were facing off against the grizzly. Zizzle yelled at him, saying she had told him to run. Galius charged towards the bear and attacked it, but it did not touch it. He realized that some kind of black fog was guarding it. He admitted to himself that the toughness was troublesome, but he could still do something about it. He faced off against the grizzly again while Zeepel and Zizzle held on to it, and Zeepel declared that he would not let it kill Galius. Galius calculated that if the black fog was counted as armor, then he could nullify it with his item master. It worked, and with the help of Zeepel and Zizzle, he brought the grizzly crashing down. They asked him if it had already been dealt with, and he replied that it had not yet been. A black ball of energy appeared, rising from the grizzly's chest. Eyes wide, Zizzle asked what it was, and Galius explained that it was the true form of the evil spirit. If they left it as it was, the evil spirit might have possessed another monster, and he did not know how long the barrier would have lasted. Just in time, Ao and Lilia arrived. The latter held the sylphid dagger and asked if they were all right. Galius rubbed Ao's head. "I see. Did you bring Lilia here because I told you not to touch it?" He then asked Lilia to give him the sylphid dagger, assuring her that he would explain later. She handed it to him, and he used it to dispel the evil spirit. "Well done, O human hero. I was preoccupied with maintaining the barrier to prevent the evil spirit from escaping. I apologize for the late introduction." A majestic wolf-like spirit with a horn on its head appeared. It introduced itself as Lunathea, the one who governed the forest. They all exclaimed in awe as they were all healed, including Kukuru, who was conscious. Garius introduced himself to Lunatia and thanked it for its help. It replied that it should be its line as it had let its guard down and had that thing slip in while it had been sleeping. Garius, looking at the dead grizzly, asked what exactly had been that thing. Evil spirits are something like a natural disaster. Originally, I should have dealt with it as soon as possible, but I was careless. I sincerely reflect on that, Lunatia replied. Garius thought to himself that it was quite a humble spirit beast. Ao barked, and Lunatia remarked that it looked like its half-body was doing fine. Surprised, Garius asked Lunatia if Ao was its child. No, it's just as I said. Ao was created in order for me to shift to a new body because I was prepared to die in that fight. It's a half-body, which is a reflection of myself. Garius asked what would happen to Ao, and Lunatia replied that the plan had been to wait for it to grow so it could transfer its soul to the new body, but the times got cut off, so that wouldn't be happening. Lunatia then mentioned that, although it had been an accident, it had been able to ascertain Garius's ability. He asked Lunatia if it had actually brought him there to get him inspected. It replied that it was glad to be able to see his true personality. After all, he had already been readily accepted by the demi-humans. Later on, Garius and Zeppel were sitting on a grassy hill, drinking as they reminisced about what had happened that day. He asked about Kukuru, and Zeppel replied that she was sleeping at the moment. Garius mentioned that he wished Terios could have come as well since they were having a celebration. Zeppel replied that he bet he was just being reserved. After a short while, Garius thanked Zeppel. When Zeppel asked why, he replied the reason why a human like himself could get accepted into the town was because he had taken care of him on everything. Drinking more, Zeppel told Garius about his son. He had had a son just like Garius. He further confessed that he had been testing if Garius really wanted to get along with the demi-humans or not. Garius pressed him about his son, and Zeppel began to lovingly talk about his son. He had died trying to stall the strongest hero together with his friends. Realizing what had happened, Garius bowed his head sadly, and Zeppel, still drinking, told him not to apologize then, or he would hit him in the face. I guess I would feel refreshed in a different way if you were a nasty person. No, I guess that's wrong. I would never feel refreshed. Even if I cut you into pieces, I probably will still have the resentment until I die. He reached out, placing his hand on Garius's shoulder. That's why. Thank you. I was able to accept his death because of you, and I felt like I got a new son. Garius burst into tears, placing his head on Zeppel's shoulder. With tears in his eyes, Zeppel teased him that big men must not cry. He thought that his tears had dried up. Ugly. The boy who got persecuted just because of that. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten how to cry. There will still be those who have grudges against the hero. Some might not be willing to forgive him. Even so, he still lives with the demi-humans dedicatedly, to repay those who have acknowledged and accepted him. During the meal Galius had served, Lippy leaned back with a contented sigh. This kotatsu is perfect, she said, glancing at him. By the way, where's Lilia? Isn't she coming by today? Galius shook his head. It's not like she visits every day, he replied. She's busy, you know. He turned to look out of the window, his gaze distant. Time passes by so quickly. It's been 3 years, huh? Lippy nodded in agreement. Yeah, 3 years. Suddenly, Lippy's demeanor changed. Damn it, Galius, how long are you going to drag this out? She exclaimed, her tone sharp with frustration. You've noticed Lilia's feelings for you, haven't you? Galius sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I appreciate it, but she's just too young, he said firmly. Lippy's frustration grew. Do you realize someone else might take her away? Are you okay with that? I know, Galius replied evenly, his tone calm but resolute. And I'm fine with it. Lippy threw her hands up in exasperation. Fine, fine? If that's how you feel, then I'll just tell Lilia myself that you don't care. Before the conversation could escalate further, Blue's barking echoed through the house. Lippy frowned and stood. That must be Blue. I haven't seen her all morning. Was she out? Yeah, Galius replied, heading toward the sound. But she's back earlier than I expected. Kukuru walked in, looking so surprised to see Galius, saying, Long time no see. Galius was surprised by her, saying that he was glad to see her too before welcoming her in. He gave a cup of tea before asking her why she was in his place. Kukuru gasped as she almost forgot the reason why she was in his place. She then explained that his hometown, the kingdom of Midteria, had been destroyed. Galius was seen riding a dragon named Black. He thanked the dragon before explaining to Kukuru and Lippi that he would be back the day after tomorrow. He got to Fratus, which was the closest fortified city to Limresta, and though it wasn't as buzzing as the Midteria kingdom was, it was still a thriving city with a strong agricultural industry. Galius decided to gather information about the kingdom as Fratus first. 3 men were standing around a massive lizard that lay wobbling on the ground, clearly exhausted and struggling to move. One of the men yelled at the creature, commanding it to walk and questioning why it was tiring so easily. Another, his tone filled with irritation, pointed out that if the lizard died, they would have to pay a fine. The third man, seemingly exasperated, suggested shifting the blame to the slave trader, arguing that it was the trader who had assured them they could discipline the creature without consequence. As the argument among the men continued, Galius arrived at the scene. His gaze fixed on the injured lizard, and his tone carried a stern edge as he asked them directly, "Are you the ones who hurt this lizard?" The 3 men turned to face him, their expressions shifting from annoyance to curiosity and slight defiance. One of them sneered, "Who are you to ask us that?" Unfazed, Galius repeated his question with greater intensity, refusing to back down. "I said, are you the ones who hurt this lizard?" Realizing they needed to come up with a story, the men quickly denied the accusation. "It wasn't us," one of them lied, gesturing vaguely toward the distance. "We were attacked by demons. The lizard got caught in the middle of it." Galius's sharp eyes narrowed, clearly unconvinced. "If demons attacked, why is the lizard the only one injured?" One of the men finally broke the tense silence, blurting out defensively, "Yeah, no shit. We had to use him as bait so we could gather the materials and make some cash, man." His tone was almost proud, as if the explanation justified their actions. Galius's expression hardened as he shook his head. "It's still your fault," he said firmly. Another man, clearly irritated, raised his voice. "Fault? That thing's a monster," he exclaimed, as if trying to shift the blame. "Don't lie," Galius replied coolly, his unwavering tone making it clear he wasn't buying their excuses. "I still have other things to ask you." The men exchanged nervous glances, and then one of them cautiously ventured, "Are you trying to enter the city?" Galius raised an eyebrow at the question, replying nonchalantly, "What if I said yes?" Seizing the opportunity, one of them stepped forward with a proposal. "We can talk to customs on your behalf," he offered quickly, his tone suggestive. "But you're going to help us in return." Galius tilted his head slightly, feigning curiosity. "Help you? And what does that entail?" he asked. "It's simple," the man said, waving his hand dismissively. "All you've got to do is kill the lizard and keep quiet about it. That's all." For a moment, Galius remained silent, letting their words hang in the air. Then, with a faint smirk, he replied, "All right, I get you. But a little correction." He paused, his smirk widening. "I'm not an adventurer. I'm a bandit." The revelation left the 3 men stunned. They exchanged alarmed looks, clearly unsure how to respond, but Galius wasn't finished. "And as a bandit," he continued, his voice calm but laced with menace, "I plan to steal everything from you." His gaze turned sharper, his tone dropping an octave. "Well, killing indiscriminately is part of our job, no? You and I both." Galius glared down at the 3 men, his gaze cold and unyielding. "That's why I'm always ready," he said, his voice calm but lethal. "To kill or be killed. That's the world we live in." Without hesitation, he moved into action. In a swift, precise series of attacks, the men were down before they could react, groaning and sprawling on the ground. Galius straightened, surveying the scene with a calm detachment. His thoughts wandered as he looked at their defeated forms. 3 peaceful years. I was worried I'd gone soft, he mused. He flexed his fingers, testing his strength. But it doesn't seem like I've lost my edge. Humans never deserved any spared emotions from me anyway. He was interrupted by a faint twitch from the lizard lying on the ground. Galius turned his attention to the creature, watching as it blinked sluggishly and shifted. "Who are you?" the lizard asked, its voice weak but filled with curiosity. Galius hesitated for a moment, considering his earlier lie about being a bandit. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that, he thought. But there was no use dwelling on it now. Instead, he crouched down, his expression softening ever so slightly. "I'm human," he said simply, his tone steady. "But I'm your ally, your brethren." The lizard's eyes widened slightly at his words. Galius extended his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, the lizard did the same. Garius watched as the demi-human he had saved knelt in front of the two humans. "Didn't you almost get killed by them, Dolfio?" he asked him. Dolfio replied that he wanted to say, "serves them right." But he had been taught not to disrespect the dead. Afterward, Garius asked Dolfio what he was going to do. He informed him that he was going to return to Limeresta after investigating the town, and asked if Dolfio wanted to return with him later. Dolfio thanked him for the offer, but rejected it, saying he could not run away while leaving all his friends. Garius asked about his enslavement, and Dolfio confirmed it, explaining that in Flatus, there were more than 1,000 of them enslaved by a dealer called the Luciola Company. Garius then told him that it would be tough, but he should endure it for a little while. Dolfio was confused by what he meant. "But with 1,000 people, the problem lies with mobility. My head hurts thinking about how to help them all out of town and go all the way to Limeresta," Garius mused. Still confused, Dolfio told him that he did not quite follow what Garius was saying. Garius replied that he was thinking about how to free them all from the slave dealer. Dazed, Dolfio just stared at him without replying. Garius continued to plan. He needed to get into town and gather some information first. He had a golden pass which they used to get inside the town. Upon entering the town, Garius and Dolfio approached a building and went into the building. They met with the representative of the Luciola Company, Muliet, who had been informed by the receptionist that they wanted to make a large transaction. Garius asked him how much it would cost if he wanted to hire all of the demi-human slaves. The man replied that he could not lend any of them to someone with an unknown background, which made Garius understand that the man was evaluating him. Garius then told him that he was in a bit of a rush. After all, they had traveled here in big numbers from the south. Muliet, on hearing this, became excited as it meant from across the river. He asked Garius if he was from the Balinhart Empire. Garius recalled what Kukuru had told him about the Balinhart Empire. After the Principality of Grizzitalia, one of the southern unions was destroyed by their vassals' scheme. Balinhart had captured and absorbed one union after the other and named themselves an empire. They attacked the Mid-Terrier Kingdom. They must have an exceptional emperor. She had further said that there was no information regarding his powers gift. Garius had decided that he was going to gather more information, as it was important to be aware of what they were planning to do as a country. Back to the present, Garius asked Muliet if he would be in trouble if the empire attacked. Anxious, Muli replied that it went without saying. Their precious products would be taken into battle, and it would be hard on business later. He further added that even if nobody attacked, the slaves would soon be overwhelmed in the early spring. Garius asked if they were hired for agricultural work, and Muliet replied that they were. The town's main focus was on agricultural work. Besides farming, there were bug landowners in Parliament who hired them, though it would not hinder them from their work. They attached shackles to the slaves to prevent escape. Garius clenched his fists as Muliet spoke, thinking to himself that it was an opportunity. Muliet continued to babble on. "If we don't comply with any of their requests, the kingdom's nobles and military personnel who control the parliament will nag us because we settled here after them. To think that our precious products may get ruined by them." Garius' eyes narrowed at Muliet's words. He said to Muliet that he had been saying that the demons he enslaved were precious products to him, and asked if he really cherished them. Muliet replied that he, of course, did. The fodder cost was crazy high, and they would be troubled if the slaves died. He further said that the slaves were their precious business tools after all. Garius asked again, confirming that Muliet only saw the demi-human slaves as products. Muliet replied as he asked if that wasn't the way it went. They were demons after all. With narrowed eyes, Garius replied that it was exactly as he had said, and that it was a natural thing for the human race to think that way. Meanwhile, he thought to himself that nothing was better than to make use of those obnoxious humans. "I'm guessing even if the top brass in this town gets replaced, you wouldn't mind, right?" he asked Juliet. Muliet replied that if it did not get worse than that, then he would rather have them replaced. Garius then told him that his boss was generous to the citizens' economic activities, so he mostly wouldn't meddle in someone's business. He assured Muliet that from then on, he wanted to keep on good terms with him. Muliet eagerly agreed. Afterward, Garius was in an alleyway when he saw a stray dog. He gave the stray dog something to eat, and the dog bent to eat it. Garius patted its head as he thought to himself what to do next. He had lots of concerns about an escape to the utopia with 1,000 demi-humans. But he mused that if they could live in Limeresta, Dolfio, and the other demi-human slaves in that town, there would be a time when they could smile happily, just like Lippy and Lilia. He was determined that there was nothing he could not do, and he had his hands for their sake. "I'd be happy if you were the one that I wished for," a voice spoke from behind him. Garius looked back to see a cloaked figure approach him. The person, who had a scar across his face, called Garius by name and told him that he had been for him. The girl removed her veil with a fluid motion and introduced herself again, telling Galius her name was Manos and that she was an elf. Noticing that Galius's gaze had lingered on her scarred ear, she remarked with a slight smirk that he was likely wondering about it. She explained that some time ago, a hoax had circulated claiming that elf ears had magical medicinal properties. It had led to unpleasant encounters for her kind, she said, gesturing to the scar on her ear. However, she added with a wry tone that the situation had at least allowed her to blend into human society more easily when needed. Galius expressed his surprise at her explanation, acknowledging it with a brief murmur. Manos, however, quickly redirected the conversation, insisting that they return to the main topic. Galius agreed, but proposed that they exchange information first. He told her that his knowledge came primarily from a group of adventurers he had encountered earlier that morning, as well as from Lucula's representative. Manos appeared taken aback and asked him if he was referring to Muyet. Galius confirmed this with a nod, explaining that he hadn't expected someone like Muyet to make an appearance. Manos remarked that it was impressive for Galius to know so much after just a single day. As Galius took a sip of his tea, he explained that, based on the information she had shared about the status quo in Fraudus and other city-states, it was reasonable to assume that other cities also persecuted and enslaved demi-humans. Internally, Galius reflected on the risks involved, acknowledging that freeing the demi-humans in Fraudus might lead to harsher treatment of slaves elsewhere. To the humans in these cities, demi-humans were viewed as nothing more than commodities. Despite these concerns, he resolved not to waver in his determination to save whoever he could. Noticing the shift in his expression, Manos asked what was troubling him, commenting that he looked unusually grim. "Well, I was thinking of how to rescue the demi-humans," Galius replied. Hearing that, Manos lost her balance while pouring tea, spilling some onto the table. She quickly collected herself and apologized. "I'm sorry, I'll quickly wipe it off," she said, grabbing a cloth to clean the mess. As she cleaned, she asked, "Do you really think it's possible to save everyone?" Galius nodded and replied that he had a plan but would need insiders to secretly report to him. He asked if she could help him find people willing to assist. Manos agreed and took him to meet some demi-humans who could help. After Galius explained his plan, they all agreed to support him. One of the demi-humans raised a concern. "Let's say you save our brethren there. Wouldn't that make things worse for the rest in other cities?" Galius admitted he couldn't deny the risk, but shared his optimistic outlook. He explained that humans saw demi-humans as goods rather than people, and doubted they would harm slaves as retaliation for those who were freed. He also pointed out that slave traders, focused on their profits, would ensure their slaves weren't harmed. The group murmured in agreement. One of them mentioned that enslaved demi-humans were often heavily monitored, so there wasn't much danger of direct harm. Another added that it wouldn't be easy, and saving many might require sacrifices. "But still," he said, "I hope for the best outcome regardless." He then brought up another major issue: how to move all the freed demi-humans to Limeresta. The others agreed it was a critical point to consider. Galius explained more of his plan. He told them he had learned that most of the demi-humans worked on farms on the outskirts of the city, so that was where they should strike. All they had to do was unchain the workers and free them there. When they asked what would happen next, Galius detailed the next steps of his strategy. They praised his plan, saying it was clever and minimized concerns about supplies or pursuers. Galius informed the group that the only remaining step was gathering the necessary supplies. With the spring harvest only a few days away, they had roughly 2 weeks of preparation time. The demi-humans assured him they would have everything ready by then. "Can we really pull this off?" Galius asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. One of the demi-humans looked at him sharply. "What do you mean by that, General? You should just tell us to do it." Galius chuckled and replied, "I'm not a general, though." Another demi-human chimed in, smirking. Doesn't matter, boy. You're leading this operation, so it's fine to call you general. A carpenter among them enthusiastically added, We carpenters are in. If there aren't enough hands, we'll gather more people. Don't worry about that. An orc thumped his chest and grinned. Leave the heavy lifting to us orcs, boss. You ogres are in too, right? The ogres nodded in agreement, their determination shining through. One of them growled, We'll do whatever it takes. Galius scanned the room, his heart swelling with admiration. These were truly reliable people, willing to risk everything for the cause. After wrapping up the meeting, Galius went straight to Muyet. He handed over a hefty sack, explaining that it contained around 500 coins, the most he could fit in it. The whole thing is yours, Galius told him. Keep the change if there's any. Muyet weighed the sack in his hands and smiled. This is more than enough, he said. And don't forget, I've already spoken to the guards. Galius nodded. Thank you. I'll take the documents and carriages then. Muyet hesitated before adding that the slaves he bought were left and were useless. As he was about to ask him why he bought them, Galius shut him off, telling him no questions and asking if he was still interested in working with him. Of course, Muyet replied without hesitation. Good, Galius said firmly. Then I'll be taking all of it. As Muyet watched Galius leave with the carriages, he couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. He estimated that, based on the weight of the sack, there were at least 600 gold coins inside, far more than he had anticipated. The amount was not only sufficient to restock their supply of slaves, but also guaranteed an enormous profit margin. His mood was elated, and a greedy smile crept across his face. Just as he was basking in his good fortune, a panicked voice called out to him. One of his workers ran up, looking flustered and out of breath. Muyet, sir, there's big trouble. Muyet's smile disappeared instantly, replaced by irritation. What's the fuss now? He demanded. The worker, still gasping for air, explained that someone had broken into the safe. An estimated 600 gold coins have been stolen, the man exclaimed. Muyet froze. His mind raced back to the heavy sack Galius had handed him. The words Galius had spoken echoed in his mind, and the realization struck him like a thunderbolt. The money Galius had paid him, it was stolen from his own safe. His face turned beet red with rage. That pig-faced scoundrel, he bellowed. You, get the carriages ready. The worker nodded quickly, assuring him that Galius couldn't have gotten far. But before he could leave, the worker hesitated, looking even more alarmed. What now? Muyet snapped, his patience wearing thin. Sir, the demons. They're escaping, the worker stammered, his voice rising with panic. They're flying, the worker shouted, pointing toward the holding area. His eyes were wide with disbelief, as if he couldn't trust what he was seeing. A guard in a tent in the middle of the field drank recklessly as he mocked the demi-human slaves. He said that it was so easy handling them, and they never tried to run, though they were bigger than him. Sensing a movement, he looked up just as a demi-human struck him down. The demi-human whistled, signaling the others who understood that it meant the extermination unit had completed their mission, and they began to move, asking the other demi-humans to follow them. One of them asked where they were escaping to, and they replied that it was a utopia, their paradise. With a horse carriage? With these numbers, we can't outrun the guards, the demi-human said worriedly. The demi-human leading the escape pointed to the sky, explaining that they wouldn't use the horse carriage as they had prepared something else. He was pointing to wyverns. A few days ago, Garius and Kukuro had approached the dragons. The ancient dragon, Fafnir, had asked him what he wanted, warning him that he should not say that he was there to defeat him. Garius had introduced himself and Kukuro, and explained that the reason they had gone there was to ask for his help. Fafnir had glared at him as he said that he understood the situation, but he had no obligation to fulfill Garius's wish. Replying that he was aware of that, he and Kukuro presented barrels and a brush. The barrels had been filled with sake, and the dragons happily gulped them down. Garius used the brush to scratch their backs. They had enjoyed every bit of it. Afterward, with a serious look in his eyes, Fafnir told Garius that he had accepted the conversation and asked him to speak his wish. Garius then told him that he wanted to borrow 10 wyverns. Back to the present, the demi-humans all worriedly asked about the others. Most of them had loved ones in other districts. The demi-humans leading the escape assured them that the same thing was happening in all districts. The demi-humans lightened up and thanked them wholeheartedly. The demi-human humbly rebutted their gratitude. He told them not to thank him but to thank their leader, as it was all thanks to him for arranging their escape. When he saw their confusion, he explained that their leader was Galius, the human hero who had made them suffer in the past, but was now there to guide them to peace. The next 7 showed Galius, driving a carriage as he thought to himself that the number of demi-humans that had taken off was lesser than his expectations. It was slightly fewer than the number he had hypothesized in his head. A flying demi-human with wings called out to him anxiously as he flew towards him. "Oh, a messenger! How's the situation?" Galius asked him. The messenger replied that there were pursuers chasing from the town, and there were dozens of them. At that rate, they were going to catch up. Galius asked if someone could handle the carriage, and one of the demi-humans in the carriage offered to do it. He then asked the messenger if he knew which district had gotten delayed from escaping. The messenger replied that it was the northern district, which was right next to the town. Galius thought to himself that the northern part was where Miguel's self-units were deployed, and it was not good to put personal feelings into it, but he was glad Lilia hadn't participated at that time. He told the others that he would go over there and that he would leave the rest to them before he dashed off on the back of one of the wyverns. The next scene showed the moon high in the night sky as Miguel and the other elves faced off against soldiers. They charged, and the battle began. In the midst of the battle, Lippy saved Lilia from an attack, and Lilia thanked her. After defeating their enemies, Lippy turned to Lilia and asked if they were finished there. Lilia, her voice still filled with urgency, shouted back that they could still provide cover for Galius and the others. Without waiting for a response, she urged Lippy to move quickly. Before she could take another step, a firm grip grabbed her from behind. It was her brother, Miguel. "Nope, we're going to save the captives," he declared, his voice stern but tinged with relief. Lilia froze for a moment, stunned to see him. "Miguel?" she called out in surprise. Miguel's expression was a mix of exasperation and concern. "You're too reckless," he said firmly, his tone brooking no argument. He reminded her of the promise she had made to him. "You told me you'd listen to orders. That was the only reason I let you and Lippy come here in the first place." There was a flicker of guilt in Lilia's eyes, but before she could respond, Miguel continued, his voice rising with emotion. "If anything happened to you, how could I explain it to Mr. Galius?" Lilia opened her mouth to refute him, but Miguel cut her off sharply. "No buts. Getting everyone onto the Dragoncraft is just as important a task, and that's what we need to focus on." At that moment, a demi-human working on the Dragoncraft ran up to them, shouting that there was an emergency. The urgency in his voice made both Miguel and Lilia turn their attention to him. "I need to speak to the field commander," the demi-human called out. Miguel stepped forward. "That's me," he said loudly, signaling for the demi-human to speak. The demi-human's face was pale, and his voice trembled as he explained the situation. "Fratus has sent human reinforcements. There are 50 of them, and they're already here." Both Miguel and Lilia stared at him, stunned. The weight of the news sank in quickly. Before Miguel could react, Lilia shouted, "Put out the bonfire immediately!" Her voice carried a sense of desperation and determination. Miguel turned to her, his expression filled with disbelief. "Don't tell me you're trying to lure them away," he yelled. Miguel shouted Lilia's name, begging her to wait, but she was already gone. Frustrated, he put out the bonfire, doing his best to follow her plan. Lilia, on the other hand, used her magic on the flames, yelling for them to burn the humans and draw them away. She hoped it would be enough. "This has to work," she thought to herself. Suddenly, she was hit by a defensive magic attack. Her horse stumbled, and she fell hard to the ground. Dazed and in pain, she struggled to make sense of it. "How? It's dark, and I'm so far away. How could they hit me while riding?" She wondered what kind of powers these humans had. The human soldiers approached her. Fear gripped her, but before she could react, a strong gust of wind swept through. Out of nowhere, Galius appeared, looking calm yet determined. "Galius!" she called out, relief and surprise clear in her voice. "I'll ask questions later," he said firmly. "Right now, we need to deal with these humans." He picked her up and carried her as he flew into the sky. As they soared higher, Lilia spoke quickly. "Wait! They have someone with a defensive gift. Even my strongest magic didn't work against it." "I know," Galius replied calmly. I saw it from far away. Don't worry, I'm ready for this. Below them, the humans began shooting arrows. Lilia's heart raced as the arrows sped toward them, but Galius raised his hand, stopping them in midair with his magic. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he sent the arrows flying back at the attackers. Lilia stared in amazement. How did your wind blades get past their shield? She asked. Galius smiled slightly as he explained. When their shield is up, nothing can pass through it, not even their own attacks. For the archers to shoot, the shield has to come down. The moment it dropped, I sent my wind blades at the one holding the defensive power. Lilia was awestruck by how clever he was. Galius then turned to her and asked, How is the situation on the ground? It's bad, she admitted quietly. The humans are sending reinforcements. I'm sorry, Galius. But Galius shook his head. Don't apologize, he said. It's because of you that the reinforcements were dragged away. It's the perfect time for a surprise attack, Galius added. Galius noticed that Miguel was the only one still fighting the humans. He rushed in to save him just as Miguel was about to get hurt. In doing so, Galius himself came dangerously close to being injured, but Lilia and her brother intervened in time to rescue him. Together, they managed to bring him to a safe place. Once they were secure, Miguel expressed his gratitude and asked if Galius was okay. Galius reassured him, explaining that he was fine and urging them to focus on preparing the dragons and treating the injured. Lilia voiced her concern, saying that the city might send more reinforcements while they were busy helping the wounded. Galius calmly responded, I killed 100 or so before coming here. 150, including the reinforcements. I'm sure they are very wary of sending more. Both Miguel and Lilia were shocked to hear this. Galius then told them that he would rest for a while and leave the rest of the work to them. After some time, Galius woke up to the sound of Lilia and Lippy shouting excitedly that he was awake. Lippy greeted him cheerfully, saying, Good morning. Sitting up, Galius asked about the outcome of their mission. Lippy and Lilia exchanged grins before Lilia revealed, It was a success. Lippy added with enthusiasm, We managed to save everyone. Galius felt immense happiness hearing this, though his thoughts turned somber. He reflected on the sacrifices made during the mission, but took solace in the fact that thousands of their brethren had been saved. However, he reminded himself that many were still enslaved. He doubted the same tactics would work again, and recognized there wouldn't be another opportunity like this. He resolved that they couldn't afford to fight cleanly anymore, and would need to set aside fair play and ethics if it meant ensuring justice. His deep thoughts were interrupted when Lilia pinched him and asked what he was thinking about at that moment. Galius told Lilia that she should not be doing that. Lilia asked him what there was not to be happy about. He agreed with her, saying that they should all be celebrating. He then asked why the two were there since they had promised to stay at home. Lilia and Lippy yelled in unison, saying that they were there to pick him up. Lippy and Lilia, in towels, walked out of the cottage and headed to the onsen. Lippy was excited as she walked happily, chanting, Onsen, while Lilia just called her name. When they got there, Garius and Zizzle were in the pool, enjoying their bath. On seeing them, Lilia bent down, clutching her towel to her body as she screeched in shock. Whoa, 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 why are you here, Garius? Even Zizzle-sama is here, she asked as she yelled. Garius rolled his eyes, thinking to himself that that had been his line, while Zizzle laughed at the situation and assured the girls. Later on, all four of them were in the water. Kukuru, oblivious to the tensions around her, splashed happily in the water while Garius and Lilia stared at each other uncomfortably. Breaking the silence and the tension, Zizzle spoke up, saying that bathing with people that he trusted was the best thing that could ever happen to him. He then addressed Garius and informed him that they had concluded the council meeting. The next scene shows the council meeting that happened. Garius and several other demi-humans were seated around a table as Garius addressed them. Our operation went successfully this time. Thank you. I could not have done it without everyone. But there's still so many of our people imprisoned in the city-state, he said. The members of the council began to speak amongst themselves. One asked if they should decide which town to save first, and the demi-human he had been talking to replied that in order to do that, they would need to gather information on each town. As another said that there were 10 other towns in the city-state, yet another demi-human spoke up, saying that that did not mean they should give up on them. Garius closed his eyes briefly as the heated words of the other members of the council washed over them. He stomped his foot on the found once and declared that he had a plan. "Let's save them all, simultaneously," he said, shocking them all into silence. "We're going to war with them," he further said. Surprised at the mention of war, Zizzle reminded him that their opponent was a whole city, and they overwhelmingly outnumbered them. Garius replied that of course they would not be waging a head-on assault against them. The enemy army consisted of several tens of thousands, and they only had around 2,000 at most. He told them that if they performed a frontal assault, they would certainly lose. The council remained silent, and all the demi-humans looked sad, defeated. He then said that he would explain what he had in mind. After he explained the details of his plan, they remained silent. He thought to himself that the reaction was not surprising, since it was something that only humans would do. Anyway, it'll take time to prepare. If there's anyone who disagrees with my plan, I'll hear your reason with an open mind. I won't force anyone to go through with my plan either. Please discuss it with everyone and tell me when everyone has reached an agreement. Back to the present, Garius said to Zizzle that he had not expected then to have concluded that fast, once it was a plan that demi-humans would hate. Zizzle replied that they had been surprised at first, since it was a plan to capture a whole town as a hostage, capturing Flaticus, an agricultural city and the source of food, then demanding to release the slaves in the city-state. Garius replied that it was a cowardly strategy that the human race was always happy to use. Zizzle replied that they normally would not want to fight when they did not need to, but they would never be regarded as equals. They kept putting up with them. The demi-humans had decided to never abandon their brethren and always keep their promises, and so they had reached a unanimous conclusion to support Garius's plan. He then asked Garius if he had considered what would happen next, about becoming Limeresta's representative. This surprised both Lippy and Lilia, and they were excited about it, but Garius turned it down. Zizzle assured him that there was no need to rush to a conclusion and that there was still plenty of time to think about it. Garius noted that Zizzle would not give up on it, and soon his attention was drawn to an ornament in Lilia's hair. He complimented her, and she thanked him. Zizzle and Garius resumed talking about their plan and their need for equipment comparable to the Sylphid dagger when a spirit suddenly appeared, excitedly introducing itself. It was an underwater hikikomori type, a Kelly spirit beast, Ishiki. Missy Uiski told Galius that she could provide the materials to make weapons, but only if he agreed to listen to her request. Galius, curious, asked her what her request was. Missy Uiski explained that it was a sensitive matter and revealed that she wanted him to chase away her stalker. Galius, along with Lilia, Kukuru, and Lippy, was surprised by her words. Seeing their shocked expressions, Missy Uiski reassured them that Galius would understand the situation once he met the stalker. Galius finally met Missy Uiski's stalker, Mr. Leviathan. As he introduced himself, Leviathan acknowledged him, saying he had heard of Galius and even called him a human hero. Leviathan then explained that he had successfully wheedled the other beast spirit into befriending him. After that, he calmly asked Galius to state his purpose. Galius, still somewhat surprised, quickly responded, denying any form of wheedling or manipulation. Leviathan, however, made it clear that while he could coexist with demi-humans, he had no intention of working with Galius. Galius, now feeling a bit of frustration, thought to himself that Leviathan would be a difficult one to please. Galius then asked Leviathan if he knew the Kelpie beast spirit, Wisga. Leviathan replied that he had been wondering where the good-for-nothing had gone, but it turned out she had gone to Galius to ask for help. He referred to Uisge as a good-for-nothing once again, continuing with his explanation. He said that it wasn't that he had meddled with her because he liked her, but he simply couldn't stand her being a self-indulgent sloth. Such a disgrace of a beast spirit. I had to give her a little shock for her to straighten up herself, Leviathan added with frustration. Galius nodded and replied that he understood. Leviathan, not finished, continued explaining that the beast spirits, including himself, became rulers and protectors of their areas as they gained strength and intellect. He then asked Galius if he understood him before moving on to say that Uisge was lazier than even he was when he was new as a beast spirit. Galius, thinking it through, realized that this explained the reason behind Leviathan's stalking of Uisge. He then asked Leviathan to consider it his way, explaining that the reason he had been selected as a beast spirit was because he had to fill in the shoes of others who would not do the work. Leviathan agreed, adding that he should not have wasted his time with Uisge, referring to her as good-for-nothing again. Galius, trying to lighten the situation, told Leviathan not to worry too much about that. Leviathan, appearing to calm down a bit, acknowledged Gallius's words and agreed, saying that he was right. Galius asked Leviathan, "By the way, I heard from Uisuke that there are dark crystals in this lake. Is that true?" Leviathan confirmed this, explaining that he had discovered the crystals while inspecting the lake bed and that this was the best he could offer Galius at the moment. As Leviathan revealed the massive size of the crystals, Galius exclaimed in amazement, "It's huge!" Leviathan, however, downplayed it, stating that it was his way of thanking Galius for helping him realize he shouldn't bother with Uisuke. He couldn't resist adding a jab, calling Uisuke an idiot. Later, Galius took the crystals home and forged them into a dagger. In the following scene, he is seen trying to give Zepar a drink. Zepar appeared pleased by Galius's presence and remarked, "It's right before the big day, brat. Why find this old coot?" Galius explained that he wanted to spend time with him, confessing that the responsibility on his shoulders felt heavy. Zepar agreed, acknowledging, "You're doing something big. It'd be weird if you weren't burdened." As they shared a drink, Galius commented, "I showed everyone victory, and victory is intoxicating." Zepar immediately picked up on his underlying concern and asked, "Are you worried about them being careless?" Galius admitted that while he was confident his allies knew better, he still feared they might develop a false sense of security, even subconsciously, because of their previous win. Zepar reassured him, saying, "They're not like that. Unlike you, they're used to losing all the damn time." This observation brought a wry smile to Galius's face, and after a moment he responded, explaining that he wasn't some infallible Mr. Undefeated, not with his track record. The two continued their conversation. Zepar's eyes widened in disbelief, and he exclaimed, "No freaking way. You're telling me that somebody beat you before?" The scene shifted to Lippy, and Lilia approaching Galius with curiosity in their expressions. Lilia noticed the sack in Galius's hands and asked if there was something inside. Lippy, looking slightly concerned, inquired if something was wrong. Turning to them, Galius remarked that he had heard about their decision to volunteer for the war. He expressed admiration for their dedication and said that their presence was proof of their commitment. Lippy responded with a hint of humor but a serious undertone, asking if he thought they had been house-sitting while everyone else was out fighting. Galius raised a hand to reassure them and explained that he wasn't trying to stop them. He acknowledged their abilities and said there was something he wanted to give them. Reaching into the sack, he pulled out a gleaming knife and handed it to Lilia. "This is a salamander knife," he told her. "It was forged through a contract with the fire spirit. I'm sure you can wield it effectively." Lilia accepted the knife with a mix of awe and gratitude, running her fingers over its intricate design. Galius then turned to Lippy and presented her with a pair of speed boots and the sword feather of solace. Handing the items to her, he explained that they were as special as the knife he gave Lilia. Lilia, bowing her head slightly, expressed her thanks, explaining that she wasn't particularly skilled in close combat, but would try her best with the knife. Galius assured her that the dagger would enhance her offensive magic if she chose to use it that way, adding that it could also serve as a reliable tool for self-defense. Meanwhile, Lippy examined the items Galius had given her, expressing her gratitude as well. She mentioned that the boots were self-explanatory, but admitted she was curious about the sword. Galius explained to Lippy that the sword was crafted from a branch of the Millennium Tree, combined with feathers from a Pegasus and the mane of a Kelpie. He elaborated on its unique properties and its immense power. Lippy, looking at the sword with awe, asked him if he was truly okay with giving her something so valuable. He reassured her with a firm, "Yes," explaining that her exceptional skill in wielding elemental weapons made her the perfect fit for it. Both Lippy and Lilia were overjoyed, running around and experimenting with the gifts they had received. Galius watched them with a smile, but quickly cautioned them, reminding them that the battlefield was no place for carelessness and that the weapons were not toys but tools for survival. As the two girls eventually walked away, Galius's expression turned contemplative. He thought to himself that he was undoubtedly not suited to be a representative or a leader of such magnitude. The role required someone who could unite the country and lead with a cold-hearted determination when necessary. A true leader, he mused, had to be logical, objective, and willing to make sacrifices for the greater good without hesitation. His thoughts shifted to the weapons he had just given to Lippy and Lilia. He acknowledged that there were others who might be able to wield them more effectively, but he had created those weapons specifically for them. The decision was not based on logic, but on favoritism and selfishness. Yet he felt no regret. For Galius, ensuring the girls' survival on the front lines and reducing the risks they faced justified his actions. He resolved in his heart that his choices, while flawed, would ultimately lead to success. His ultimate goal was to rescue the enslaved demi-humans and secure their freedom, no matter what the cost. I have been selfish enough. I cannot compromise anymore. Even if my brain is fried out or my limbs are shredded, I will see this through, Galius muttered to himself.